war and a certain idea and are always propagating it. But when it comes to doing it themselves, they don't do it. Whether that's George W. Bush or Trump or our very own Haqiqatjou. These guys are okay to propagate wars and revolutions, but when it comes to taking action, they run away. Trump made health excuses, and so did George W. Bush. But our friend Haqiqatjou also makes similar excuses to get out of it. Why?
Wait, what is this argument? I get a. Is he like in what's the word? Is he part of the Australian army? Like, is he some kind of soldier? Is he like fighting for Australia? He's living there, right? Is he like participating in any of that? Maybe he is, and really, I'm not that familiar with Harris's entire life story or his back history. But he doesn't strike me as someone who has done military service, right? Why not? How does your critique right here not apply to you, Harris?
Why does he not go to Afghanistan or Syria to fight for ISIS or Taliban? If you say, well, they're not truly Islamic, then go there. It's definitely much closer to Muhammad or your true Islam than America is. But no, I'm keen to see what excuses you make this time. Haqiqatjou likes to present himself as not like any other apologist. He says
this Afghanistan argument is so stupid. It is so dumb, and this is the thing that atheists need to realize, or whoever that's in these chat, like in the chat right now, or on my Facebook comments. You guys are supposed to be free thinkers, right? Then how come you all have the same comment? You all have the same, move to Afghanistan, move to Afghanistan, move to Afghanistan. Literally, I'm talking about thousands of comments on my social media from you trolls. You're supposed to be free thinkers. How can you not understand? And this was the whole Botswana argument that I responded to him with, is like, look, why are you have people who are dying to get into the US from these countries in Africa, South America. They're risking their lives, but they're coming from human rights countries, human rights abiding democracies. So why is that? And Harris, in his stupidity, acknowledged that, well, it's probably for economic reasons. Yeah, no, you don't. No, duh. That's why. They're coming for economic reasons. They're coming for safety reasons. They're coming for these kinds of reasons, not because they necessarily see a problem with human rights, because the U.S. has human rights that they're trying to migrate to, and the countries that they're migrating from are also acceptors and ratifiers of the UN's human rights, UN Declaration of Human Rights. So it's not a question of values. It's not a question of legal system. It's a question of these other factors, like, is your life at risk? Are you going to be able to survive? The West, the imperial human rights West, colonial West, has created a system where all the wealth and safety is monopolized in one part of the world. And if you try to live in other parts of the world, you're in very clear danger. And that's the case for any advocate of Islam, of Sharia, any advocate of or opponent of this liberal human rights regime. Afghanistan has 20 years history of being bombed. 20-year history of military occupation. Like, Harris goes on to deny some of these things, as we'll see. But so suicide is haram in Islam. It's killing yourself, taking your children into a situation where there's a good chance that they'll die. So where in the world can Muslims move to and make hijrah to when every single part of the world is being dominated by this system? Everywhere is being dominated by this liberal, globalist system. That's what you have to ask. Okay? That's what you have to ask. Even in these human rights abiding countries, if you start advocating for Islam and for Sharia, you can be taken out. And Afghanistan is no different. The U.S. left in defeat from Afghanistan after 20 years of occupation, but they're still talking about wanting to pressure them and bomb them. And I want to move to a Muslim country. I want to move to a country that believes in God. How about that? A country where people can believe in God without worrying about being attacked, without worrying about their children being indoctrinated and made into atheists? Is there a country like that? They don't allow such countries to exist. They don't allow such societies to exist. That's the entire point, Harris. So let's hear what he says.
Says it as it is. He doesn't hold back. If Islam condones violence, he says, yes, so what? It is what it is. But when it comes to fighting the holy war or application of Sharia, he doesn't actually do anything. At least those jihadis who went to Syria to fight for ISIS were honest. Osama bin Laden, who gave up his life of luxury, was honest. They were literalist and honest. Haqiqatjou is only a literalist and honest as long as he is sitting in his nice suburban home in America watching Muslim apologists debate on 70-inch TVs. And so is the case with all these trolls whose following Haqiqatjou enjoys. They stay at home, probably enjoy welfare payments, but buy nice cars and enjoy shisha at night. Wallah.
Who is like enjoying welfare payments and buying nice cars?
Life is good. Everything's sorted. But let's curse the West. Look what Prophet Muhammad said about people like Haqiqatjou. Not equal among the believers who sit and the mujahideen who fight for Allah. Tirmidhi 3033. Look what the Quran says. Fighting is enjoined upon you. While it is hard on you, it could be that you dislike something when it is good for you. Quran chapter 2 verse 216. This is directly for you, Haqiqatjou.
You're doing the same thing. You're sitting and you're advocating for human rights very poorly. You're not part of the Australian army. Why don't you go join the UN? Go join the UN, be part of peacekeeping, and, work for the UN to maintain peace around the world and uphold human rights around the world. Why don't you do that, Harris? If you're a human rights activist, why don't you do that? You don't really believe in the cause? You think that Islam requires that Muslims constantly be engaged in jihad all the time, no matter what? This is, like I mentioned in the debate, this is an ISIS gloss or interpretation of what Islam is. It's not a true interpretation of Islam, and all of the scholarly books of fiqh from 500 years ago, 600 years ago, 700 years ago state this. And I gave you all the references. So your understanding of Islam is completely off base. And even by your own standards, you're not meeting those standards because you're not doing anything for human rights. You're not doing anything for the cause of maximum pleasure. Join the UN. Peacekeeping, Human Rights Task Force, join that. Why are you sitting in Australia in your little room there? I don't know what that is, a living room or what. Instead of sitting there, go and join the UN. Get off your behind.
I remember Apostle Prophet asked you the same question. Haqiqatjou, you simply said, well, I have my family here. How bloody convenient. So are you saying that those people who used to go to jihad would take their family?
Yeah, how bloody convenient to care about your family. The mind of an atheist.
With them? This is what Prophet Muhammad said about the family. The Prophet said, none of you will have faith till he loves me more than his father, his children, and all mankind. Bukhari 15.
He's also ignorant about this jihad point, because in the hadith there is an example of a man who went to the Prophet ﷺ and asked, about going to jihad, and the Prophet ﷺ asked if he has any parents, elderly parents, and he said, yes, my mother. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, no, take care of your mother. That's a clear part of the seerah. So an ignorant person like Harris doesn't know anything about Islam. That's I guess summarizes his problem, is he's ignorant.
So Haqiqatjou, you want to get into answering question? Answer this question: do you love your parents and your family more than you love love the Prophet? So you got to pick up your love for you got to give up your love for nice, comfy beds, big TVs, halal cheeseburgers or kebabs maybe, and get off your backside and go set an example. Fight for what you believe in. You had the perfect opportunity to go to Syria or Afghanistan to fight for your cause, but you chose to sit in your nice house in America, whose economy runs on interest and, according to you guys, spilling the blood of innocent Muslims in Afghanistan and Iraq, being allies of Israel, like Jews. You are basically living and enjoying the perks of a country that is literally the enemy of Muslims like Afghanistan. It cannot...
So what I had wanted to say to his point here is that he's also living in a country that is bombing people. Presumably, like, he has a problem with that. He has a problem with people being bombed He has a problem with people being genocided. He has a problem with these kinds of invasions. Presumably that's the case in Afghanistan, in Iraq. He never actually explicitly said that, but I'm just trying to argue in good faith. Like, I'm trying to steelman his position. Like, let's assume, like, he has a big problem with these kinds of atrocities that are committed by these superpowers. How does he feel about that? How does he feel about living in Australia while the government of that country is doing these things? And the fact of the matter is that it doesn't feel good. People hate it. Not only Muslims, non-Muslims in this country hate it. They hate the fact that their money that they pay in taxes are going to this monstrous beast that is committing atrocities around the world, subjugating people around the world. They hate it. And the problem is that that's how terrifying this beast is, how terrifying this monster is, because this is exactly the argument against liberalism. This is exactly the argument against human rights, because it's created this system that creates so much harm and so much suffering and so much of this like series of atrocities. Basically 200 years since the Enlightenment of one atrocity after another. This control grid where you literally cannot fly. Okay? How can you travel from one country to the next? If you're on a list, okay, think about this. If you are on a list, a secret list, no-fly list, you cannot travel to wherever you want. You cannot move to wherever you want. The nation-state system is what causes this problem. The nation-state system is created to keep certain countries isolated in a system of abject dependence, in a system of abject reliance on the superpower. And arguments about this kind of global structural inequality is made by sociologists like Immanuel Wallerstein and others, world system theorists, who point out that this is a deliberate system to keep people locked away from each other, keep economies separate but dependent, in order to maintain a system of global dominance. Like, that's the explanation to the Botswana question. Why are all these human rights abiding democracies, why do they suffer from poverty and from all of these social problems? That's, I think, a very plausible explanation. And you can watch Genius of Islam episode 1, which talks more about this issue and elaborates it and illustrates it. But also, you can read a book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Confessions of an Economic Hitman, about how the superpowers use loans, IMF loans, and riba to keep these countries in the global south in a perpetual state of financial dependence. If you don't pay back your loans, you're going to get sanctioned and invaded, and the money plus interest is going to be taken from you by force, and your people are going to be enslaved, essentially, and your livelihoods are going to be destroyed, and your cultures are also going to be destroyed, because the IMF, when they are putting these kinds of policies on countries that they deal with, that they give loans to, it comes with a lot of cultural directives as well. They say that, okay, we'll give you the loan, like this $2 billion loan, $5 billion loan for your country in Africa or in Latin America or Central Europe or wherever. We'll give you the loan, but you need to have more LGBT programs. You need to have more feminist programs and marches, and we have to set up a gender and sexuality department at your top universities, and you need to have a the beauty of freedom and liberty program on the radio and on your TV stations. These are the strings that are attached to that $2 billion. So the countries take the $2 billion with interest. Inevitably, they won't be able to pay it back. and in return, their entire religion, culture is being invaded, and they're stuck in a situation of abject poverty where they have to give up the rights to their resources, their natural resources, to these Western countries. This is what France is doing. This is what France is doing to many African countries. Mozambique, Mali. This is their strategy. This is how they dominate the whole world. We live in this system.